Thursday, 10 March, The Gap News This Morning. Broadcasting live from Kuala Lumpur, I'm Ghazali Abdullah. Good morning. First, the headlines. Omicron threat among children of great concern, says Khairy. Unvaxxed, not fully vaxxed international visitors must undergo 5-day quarantine. Nightclubs to remain shut despite transition to endemic phase. Fish Ratings warns Russia-born default imminent. Fresh efforts to free civilians amid new ceasefire. BBC News journalists resume broadcast from Russia. And Djokovic entered on Indian Wells draw, but status unclear. And now the news in full. The Omicron variant poses a greater risk to children as they have yet to receive the same protection enjoyed by fully vaccinated adults, Health Minister Khairy says. He said the current situation was of great concern, noting the increase from 7,730 cases among children in 2020 to 379,245 in 2021. The total number of pediatric patients below 12 years of age infected with COVID-19 was 119,719 from January to mid-March 2022, he said in a statement. Overall, hospital bed usage among children has also seen a dramatic rise this year, with occupancy and the number of children in more serious condition both increasing sharply since the beginning of February. The number of children in critical care wards also saw a steep increase. While there had been 16 admissions as of February, that number has since risen to 31, with the majority of new cases classified as categories 4 or 5. COVID-19 vaccination for children aged 5 to 11 years started on February 3rd, and 26.8% of eligible children had received their first dose as at March 3rd. When the borders reopened on April 1st, travellers entering Malaysia who are not fully vaccinated or unvaccinated must undergo a 5-day quarantine, said Health Minister Khairy. He said in a press conference in Parliament that once these individuals have completed their quarantine, they must follow local COVID-19 protocols, which include prohibition to dine in at restaurants. As for travellers aged 17 and below, regardless of vaccination status, they do not have to be quarantined. However, they must undergo a COVID-19 test within 24 hours of arriving in Malaysia. For fully vaccinated international travellers who would undergo mandatory quarantine before the commencement of the transition towards the endemic phase, they will be released from isolation on April 1st. Nightclubs are the only type of business that will not be allowed to reopen despite the country transitioning to the endemic phase from April 1st. This was because nightclubs were still considered high risk for COVID-19 transmission. There is only one type of premises that will remain on the Do Not Open list come April 1st, and that is nightclubs. This is because the government still considers them high risk for COVID-19 transmission, Khairy said at a press conference held in the Parliament building Wednesday. A leading ratings agency has warned Russia is likely to soon default on its debts as it downgraded the country's bonds further into junk territory. Fish Ratings slashed its assessment of Russia to almost the bottom of its scale, just days after downgrading it from investment status. It is the latest blow to the country's creditworthiness in the wake of its invasion on Ukraine. This week, Moscow said its bond payments may be affected by sanctions. The further ratcheting up of sanctions and proposals that could limit trade in energy increase the probability of a policy response by Russia that includes at least selective non-payment of its sovereign debt obligations, Fish said. The announcement from Fish came after the US and UK said they will ban Russian oil as they step up the economic response to the invasion of Ukraine. BBC News journalists in Russia have resumed their broadcasts days after putting their work on hold after the introduction of a strict media law. The law threatens anyone deemed to have spread fake news about Russia's armed forces with up to 15 years in jail. Numerous other Western medias have also suspended their operations. On Tuesday, the New York Times said it was pulling staff out of the country. A fresh ceasefire in the northeastern city of Sumy is to begin shortly to allow civilians to flee to relative safety. Some 5,000 people were evacuated from the city on Tuesday, which has seen fierce Russian bombardment for days. It has emerged that 22 people, including 3 children, were killed in airstrikes on the city overnight. Russian state media said corridors will be set up for Kiev, Chernihiv, Kharkiv and Mariupol, although previous efforts have failed. The UN says 2 million refugees have now fled the country since Russia invaded. Moscow says Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Ukrainian counterpart Dmytro Kuleba will meet in Turkey on Thursday. Fighting is continuing north and northwest of the Ukrainian capital Kiev as Russian forces continue their offensive. A maternity and children's hospital in the city of Mariupol has been hit by a Russian airstrike, Ukraine says. President Volodymyr Zelensky said people were trapped under the wreckage and called on Western leaders to impose a no-fly zone. He also posted footage apparently from inside the hospital, which appeared badly damaged. A regional official told Ukrainian media that at least 17 people were injured, including staff and patients. And now for some sports news. Novak Djokovic was entered into the draw for this week's ATP WTA Indian Wells tournament on Tuesday, but it is unclear whether he will take part in the tournament, organizers said. A brief statement from tournament organizers said officials were in contact with Djokovic's team to determine whether he would play in California or even be allowed to enter the US because he has not been vaccinated against the coronavirus. Djokovic is a 5-time champion at Indian Wells, where organizers have said proof of full vaccination will be required for spectator entry into the grounds for the tournament in the California desert. Under U.S. government regulations, all non-U.S. citizen travelers entering the United States must be vaccinated against COVID-19. To end the bulletin, here are the headlines again. Omicron threat among children of great concern, says Khairy. Unvaxxed, not fully vaxxed international visitors must undergo 5-day quarantine. Nightclubs to remain shut despite transition to endemic phase. Fitch Ratings warns Russia-born default imminent. Fresh efforts to free civilians amid new ceasefire. BBC News journalists resume broadcasts from Russia. And Djokovic entered on Indian Wells draw, but status unclear. This has been the Gap News this morning, Thursday, 10th March, with reports from Free Malaysia Today, The Vibes and the BBC World Service. The Gap News is also available on the internet news portal Melaka Hari Ini. We hope you found the bulletin informative. We certainly welcome hearing from you. If you do have the opportunity, please do write in. We would certainly love to hear from you. Podcasting live from Kuala Lumpur, I'm Ghazali Abdullah.